All right,
Okay,
everybody, we're up. Our next session is going to begin right now. Take it away.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Jake. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tamaki, and my colleague, Ilinca, who's also on Zoom, and she has her video on. We will do this presentation together. And I'm sorry, like we are joining by Zoom. We arrived quite late last night, and we're not staying on site, but hopefully we will be able to join the conference starting tomorrow. But today we are so grateful for Jake to let us join by Zoom. It really helped us sort of get situated. Yeah. So maybe so today we want to talk about the new course that the center, our three Center for Innovation in Science and Science Education. We tend to call it RISE, but we wanted to talk about this new course that RISE is planning to launch. And this course is about big data. And also we wanted to integrate AI to assist the analysis. So this so so this will fit to the topic of this today's afternoon session. And we wanted to talk about how to integrate responsible AI to data applications for STEM graduate curricula. Okay. Are you seeing my slide or are you seeing my note? Just wanted to make sure.
The slide.
You're seeing our slide. Wonderful. So because this is the first session about AI in the afternoon, I just wanted to do quick definitions, what we actually mean by responsible AI and what we mean by big data. So these are some of the quotes from Google, Microsoft, and IBM, what they think about responsible AI should be. So, they say that, like they're saying that a big responsible AI, the AI technology itself is continue to advance rapidly. And also they show some framework and the principles that needs to be incorporated, such as fairness, reliability, privacy, inclusiveness, transparency, and accountability. And furthermore, it's pointed that it involves stakeholders and there should be some legal standards and ethical principles. So moving to big data, what's really characteristic about big data? Usually like there are like a 3 Bs. I think there are more now, but I think 3 Bs like volume, velocity, and variety. So the volume is, I think it's very clear. It's just that it's big. And because of development in computer memories, we are now able to collect, store, and process such a large data. And for the velocity, these data are actually happening now. Like a data collection and storage and the processing is actually happening now. So there is a speed. And for the variety, we now have access to so many different kinds of data set, and some are structured and unstructured or semi-structured. And the structured here is like more of a traditional data set, like what we think as sort of, there is the variables and there are entries for the individual observations. And unstructured are more like, videos, that those data that are out there and being collected, but it needs to have some process to actually really analyze it or to make it to the analyzable stage. So we won't really touch on that in our talk. And there are some other V's added, like veracity, being accurate, variability, and value. But I think these are more like, some of them are, this is my personal opinion, but like wishful thinking, like veracity. But we will talk more about that. So what are the challenges that we are facing? So when we talk about the challenge about big data, we often face the protecting privacy, importantly, personally identifiable information, as well as protected health information. So how to protect personally identifiable information, especially when we are sharing data. We will touch on that in the later presentation when we talk about some of the model database that we want to use for the proposed new class. And for the consenting, I think nowadays we need to consent to access a lot of websites. So it is happening. It's more like, you have to opt. If you are being tracked, you will opt in to get tracked. Otherwise, or you opt out so that you can consent before you actually start getting tracked. And some of the research data is that we will also cover in the later in our presentation is that data are actually already aggregated at the data collection stage, and therefore it's actually not under the it's that it does not require consenting. So besides the privacy and consenting issues, analysis, because of the nature of the data, it is so large, we really need to have comparable data processing software to handle it, and you need to know what you're doing. And also, I'm quoting it here. This is from Wikipedia, but I thought it was really good to summarize some of the challenges which face with big data, that data with many entries offer greater statistical power. So yes, big data will give us an opportunity to answer some novel questions. But we need to be mindful that while data with higher complexity may lead to a higher false discovery rate. So just to sort of put it in the context, big data does not mean complete data or representative data. I think this is very important, of course, and it is very important for us to know the data that we are working with. This is not limited to big data, but it is critical to know our data, how is the data collected, how and where is the data of your interest stored, how is the data structured, any bias, any errors, and if you're working with database that tracks information for a long time, are there any change in the definition over the course of data collection? So with these, I want to hand it over to Ilinca, my colleague. She will, big data is one of the pillars we work with at the LISE Center, and she will go over how we are integrating that with our new course. Thank you. Over to you, Ilinca.
Hello, can everyone hear me well?
Mhm.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I actually want to zoom out a little bit and give you kind of a bit of a background on our center. So we're funnily enough also called RISE, but slightly differently since we are the R3 Center for Innovation in Science Education. So we're located at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, and we're housed in the Molecular Microbiology and Immunology Department. So our center is really dedicated to advancing the integration of the R3s, which are rigorous, reproducible, and responsible science. We develop and disseminate innovative graduate and professional level programs, workshops, and resources that really aim to emphasize these 3 Rs of open science and good research practice. And so when we think about our program, these are the main pillars of reflection that we hope to convey. So we have theory and practice of science, scientific logic and error analysis, practical ethics, communication and mentorship, quantitative reasoning and data science, and professional development and leadership. And so today, we'd like to briefly discuss our two-part course series focused around data. So we'll be focusing on that one core competency highlighted here, quantitative reasoning and data science. And so we'll be talking about a first briefly introductory course to quantitative reasoning, and then a more advanced big data course that we're working to develop now, as Tamaki mentioned, with some integration of AI components. And so the series is really designed to equip students with essential skills in data science, hypothesis testing, ethical reasoning, in the context of biomedical and health sciences, which are relevant to our department and more broadly public health in our school. Next slide, please. Yeah, so the first course has several key objectives, and it's called Fundamentals of Quantitative Reasoning. So firstly, we aim to clarify the role of models and hypotheses in scientific research. We also delve into the basics of hypothesis testing and data analysis, which we recognize are crucial for anyone working in life and biomedical sciences. And then students learn to employ advanced technologies for visualizing biomedical data, and then applying ethical considerations to their own research approaches. Next slide, please. And so the course is structured into multiple sessions shown here on the left. That's actually from our course page taken directly. And these include an introduction to data science, visualization techniques specific to biomedical sciences. Then we have detailed sessions on hypothesis testing, t-tests, chi-square tests, ANOVA, etc. And so we conclude with a review of common errors and the role of quantitative reasoning in STEM disciplines. And each session is designed to build these competencies progressively. And so I won't go into too much other detail about this course today. Next slide, please. But you can find some of our course materials from this course on our GitHub page, as well as the associated publication shown here, teaching students to reason not merely to solve problem sets, the role of philosophy and visual data communication in accessible data science education. So moving on to the more advanced course and kind of building on those fundamentals, this new Big Data Skills for Biomedical Sciences course, we hope that students will be able to learn to navigate the entire data lifecycle, basically from data acquisition through curation and storage to analysis and interpretation. And so we're focusing on employing FAIR principles, shown here, ensuring that your data management practices are findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable. We discuss critical challenges in big data, including issues related to data privacy, security, which Tamaki mentioned before. This course also covers the evaluation of published research with respect to big data applications, particularly how these technologies can be used to track and manage disease outbreaks or topics that are relevant to the department or to the school. And of course, we're also now including discussions related to AI and applications. Next slide, please. So I want to give you a practical example of what we teach and what we're planning to teach. And so we'll be examining how big data and AI have been applied in SARS-CoV-2 phylogeographic analyses. So we first describe the methods of such studies, and I'll preface by saying that this is some of the work I did during my PhD. So we're basically developing case studies around this work. So essentially, the study involved collecting hundreds of nasopharyngeal swabs from a university population, conducting a lot of molecular biology techniques, and then advanced genomics and bioinformatics analyses. And basically, we use tools to map the spread of the virus. And I think such applications demonstrate the power of integrating big data with advanced tools to inform public health strategies. Next slide, please. So we did two main types of analyses in the study. So using bioinformatics tools, we were able to construct phylogenetic trees to understand the evolutionary relationships between different SARS-CoV-2 variants. And then we also did phylogeographic analyses. So we integrated geographic information where the sequences were collected. And then we tried to map the spread of various SARS-CoV-2 variants across different regions and also look at introduction events to see where the variants were coming into our university community. Next slide, please. Yeah. And how did we do this in addition to our own samples? Well, we used big data and what's already out there. So we specifically, for this study, used GISAID, or the Global Initiative on Sharing All Influenza Data. And it doesn't have just influenza data, as you can see, but the main point was to put our sequences in context with global samples and really have an understanding of where these samples were coming from into our community. And so, can you press next, please? And to bring your attention here, this is really big data. There's over currently 17 million sequences available at this point in time. And so with that, really came the lesson that big data holds transformative potential, but it also presents significant challenges. And so in our course, we're discussing many of these pitfalls, including data quality and completeness, such as incomplete metadata submission or varying sequencing data quality. Then we have technical challenges, so the need for significant computational resources, obviously, constant update to models and tools. Next, we have sampling bias, so variations in testing and sequencing, and uneven regional data distribution. And lastly, we also have privacy and ethical considerations, so ethical handling of genetic data, individual privacy concerns. And so these are all pitfalls related to big data, but in this context of SARS-CoV-2, an infectious disease or epidemiology related studies. Next slide, please. So in the course, we're planning to go into depth, for example, in one major issue, which is the lag in data sharing, as illustrated by differences in genome sequence reporting across countries. So here we include work from a paper which shows the lag in days in sample collection to sequence submission time on GISAID. And so this lag can really delay the identification and response to new viral variants, which could complicate efforts to control outbreaks. Furthermore, inconsistencies in data quality and completeness can lead to bias analyses. It can also lead to overgeneralizations and potentially incorrect conclusions or even policy implications. Next slide, please. And so finally, for this session, we addressed the responsible integration of AI in big data applications. So AI can enhance our predictive capabilities, allowing for the simulation of public health interventions and forecasting the spread of diseases like SARS-CoV-2. So we specifically give examples of predictive modeling, which for the purposes of the course material here are twofold. We have forecasting spread, so there are AI models that can predict the future spread of the virus based on historical data and current trends. And then we also have AI can also simulate the effects of public health interventions like vaccinations or lockdown on the spread of the virus. And so this in turn would help policymakers make informed decisions. Next slide, please. So, however, our takeaway here is that responsible use requires careful consideration of ethical issues that we've been discussing. So ensuring accuracy and fairness in AI-driven decisions. So we have a discussion and then we raise questions and reflections based on balancing the benefits and challenges of AI shown here. So from things like scalability, enhanced accuracy, and increased efficiency, which are all great aspects. But then we also have ethical concerns, interpretability issues, and data quality dependence. Yeah, and so with that, I'll pass it back to my colleague, Dr. Tamaki Kobayashi, who'll be talking about a few more case studies that we're planning to include into this course and that are relevant to our School of Public Health students. Thank you.
Yeah. Oops. Thank you so much. Wait. Sorry, I think I need to mute myself, but my mute button has disappeared. Sorry, Ilinca, can you help me a moment?
We can hear you.
We can hear
You can hear
you.
you? Oh, wonderful. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry. Okay. So now I'm going to move on to some other example database that we want to use. So the next two examples is going to be about malaria parasites. And the data was from the International Centers of Excellence for Malaria Research that was funded through NIH and NIAID. And this is a project that I worked with before I joined the RISE team. And this was aimed to collect comprehensive malaria epidemiology data across the continent. And there was a need for us to standardize the data collection. So what we opted was Open Data Kit, often called ODK. And with ODK, we can create survey and we can collect the data on the mobile device. That was specifically the reason why we decided to move on to ODK, so that we do not need to do the paper-based data collection. And the data information that were collected were uploaded to the ODK database. And after data was stored in the ODK database, we downloaded and stored in REDCap. That's the research electronic data capture. So it is more safer place to store the data. And we also had an expert in the REDCap in our institute. So that was very reasonable move for us. And also he provided a lot of support to other data management team in other institutions. Because the platform was standardized, it was possible for us to move on to the stage of data sharing. So there is a database called Clean APPE. So this is not limited to malaria, but it's basically a lot of clinical infectious disease epidemiology related data, and the data is open to public, and you can also request the data set to the research group. So before we uploaded our data to the Clean APDB, there were things that we needed to take care of, the personally identifiable information such as name, age, and the GPS coordinates. These were the personally identifiable information collected in our study. So for that name, of course, this is hugely identifiable information. So we needed to create the unique IDs that can be used to link all the database, not only limited to the information that was collected by the field team using the survey, but also the experimental data generated using the sample collected through study, which I will talk next. But also for the age, instead of reporting age, we can make it categorical. So let's say under 5, 5 to 10, 5 to 15, so forth. And for the GPS coordinate, in our case, it was a location of the house where they lived. So of course, this is not something we want to make it public. So there are a couple ways of handling it, but we can either jitter the coordinates. So meaning that we just, like we move the code, we're not reporting the exact coordinate, but we just shift it a little bit so that it won't affect the geospatial analysis, but it won't reveal the exact location of the household. Or we can also aggregate the information in the quadrant. Maybe in the United States, we can also do that using a zip code. So now I'm moving to the next set of big data, which is the experimental data with the malaria protein microarray. So on the left, these are geographical locations where the samples were collected. And on the right, this is a heat map of protein microarray. And you don't need to understand this, but what I want to emphasize is that each row are individual protein, the biological markers, and each column are the samples. And there are 500 different proteins, the biomarkers on this assay system. So you can imagine like how quickly the data gets bigger. And when you multiply that information with the individual level data that we collected through the observational epidemiology study, it really gets massive quickly. So using these 8 data that's available, we plan to create a simulated database based on what we have just covered so far. And we want to use these database for students to learn how to explore large database, such as, cleaning data, because it's human who's collecting the data. So usually we face errors. So how to spot that, and how to spot that so that it won't affect our analysis. And also visualization is so important. In order to understand data, we need to look at how the data look like, what the data is telling us. And based on that visualization, we can make our own hypothesis testing. And with all these activities, we can use generative AI to assist these tasks. Students should be able to ask the question, okay, make a box plot, or, like, look at the distribution, let's make a map. And these, like, the generative AIs can assist to do that. So maybe to close this session, I want to go back to the theme of this year's APPE conference, what makes us human? And this quote of Pablo Picasso was really timely and meaningful for me. I think we can replace AI with computers, but AIs they cannot really do anything unless we prompt them to do something. They're extremely good at giving answers. But what makes us human is we can ask questions, which is, I think it's very special. And also, I just wanted to attribute special thanks to Orin Etzioni, because he was the one, I was inspired of this Pablo Picasso's court when I went to his talk that was at the Baltimore Speaker Series this January. So with this, I can open the question.
I think we have time for one audience question. Oh, David Resnick, please go ahead.
Thanks for your presentation. Very interesting. I just wondered how you really engage the students about data science ethics. I didn't really see that in your discussion. There's a lot of ethical issues in dealing with bias, both the bias in the data you find that you're working with, and sampling bias, but also you must understand data is structured in a certain way. And I know you know that. And actually the structure you put into the data has a bias too. And then
Yeah.
there's, of course, the bias in the use of different statistical methods. I guess the thing is that it's fraught with bias, right? And especially big data makes it worse, I think, because, you know, in your
I agree.
standard laboratory experiment, you kind of know what your experiment is, you know what your data are, and you see it all in front of you in your lab notebook. In data, it's so huge that the potential for bias of all kinds with big data seems much worse, right? So how do you specifically teach people about bias?
So maybe I can start and Ilinca can comment on. So I think the most important thing is visualizing data and also make a ton of tables so that you know how the variable of your interest are distributed. I am so against it. I mean, I know people don't do that, but hypothetical testing is less than 1% of your analysis. You need to look at the data. That's the reason why I said that big data does not mean complete data or comprehensive or representative data. You know, when we don't have data, that does not mean that these data doesn't exist. They're just not being collected. And by looking at some of the variables, attributes that are linked to your analysis of interest, you know, like you either come up with the way, maybe I can tabulate to do some analysis, or you might think I need to get my own data, you know, because this doesn't answer my question. But I think big data is definitely like great, like for instance, to see a trend. And also, I think because of the power of computer technology and software that is available, it is an exciting Wild West. But it's not a magic. I don't know if I answered your question.
I'll just add a little bit to that as well. So I think with our students, they typically see kind of the power that AI can give to their work, but they do struggle, at least in what we're seeing so far, based on the fundamentals course, with the ethics component, like the ethics side of it. So we're trying to get, in response to your question, get them excited or at least become aware of these ethical issues. We do things like fireside chats with certain experts who are in the biostatistics department who have more experience, like directly with big data, more on the like detailed statistical side. So that's one way. And so they're able to basically see these individuals talking about their own work and in their fields when they might not, you know, have access to these professors in other ways. So that's one way. And then we do a lot of just peer-to-peer discussions in class, and we have other we can talk more about like specific activities that we do with like sharing on the board or things like that. But yeah, those so I definitely agree with you and see the point that these topics might be considered a little bit more on the boring side, or so we do try to
Yeah.
get our students more excited about that component.
Yeah, and also, can I also add one more thing? The library at the Johns Hopkins and also Data Science Center at Hopkins, they recently had a great like a whole week session about data and ethics. And these series are recorded, and I would highly recommend students to watch some of it because, yeah, David, thank you so much for that question, because it is it's really important. What's not included in data does not get analyzed. But that does not mean that the data that does not get analyzed is not important.
Tamaki
Thank
and
you.
Ilinca, thank you so much.
Thank you for your response. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, thank you so much.